I'd like to take now the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, who will be talking about targeting building softening, and introduce Matt Keogh to the audience. Now, Matt has over 34 years operational experience in the emergency services, and now as a private consultant working with clients such as Dubai Police, INSARAG, and Matt also develops rescue equipment and trains teams across the world. Matt will be giving an overview of operational procedures designed to protect firefighters and rescuers during complex compartment fires. So I'd like to welcome Matt to the stage.
Thank you, Pete. I hope you can all see me. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to wherever you're joining from across the world. Thank you very much for that introduction, Pete. I thought Des was going to do it, so I had Des written down to thank there, but it's come from you, and it was good talking to you the other day. One of my bosses, we spoke briefly with Pete. One of my bosses was called Pete Stevenson in Manchester Fire Brigade many years ago, and me and Pete deployed. I'd say all across the world. We deployed actually to a gas explosion up in Glasgow, and when I got the invite to speak on this one, which I'm very, very proud, I thought it was Pete that was involved, but it's another Pete Stevenson. So great to meet you, Pete, and also the rest of the team. Really good presentations. I've managed to dip in and out of the presentations today. The last one from the lady in Israel, Mirav, hopefully I've pronounced your name correctly. Yeah, I can empathise with a lot of the things on there. I've taken crews across the world on earthquakes, and you will not stop those guys going into compromised buildings. It's a real skill to manage incidents and educate firefighters, and my presentation hopefully today will give a little bit more education across the world. I'd like to start the presentation by going back to Des's opening 2 or 3 hours ago. Get a bit confused on time because I know this is in the GCC and I'm sat in my house in Manchester and it's about midday. But Des gave a presentation opening about 2 hours ago, and he mentioned opportunities to learn off incidents. I think this is absolutely critical. And if you look at Adam's presentation, it completely backs this up. Every incident we go to, we will learn something. And in the 34 years I've been in the fire and rescue service, whether it's through my military service or my operational experience in the Metropolitan Brigades, every incident I attended, there was something to learn. And my chief officer, when I left recruits course many, many years ago, said, if you learn one thing every day, you'll be a great firefighter by the time you get to the end of your career. So I echo 100% what Des was saying. And I think it's critical that we use the information we learn from incidents, whether that's through operational assurance, through debriefs or lessons learned, then we pass this information on. We pass it on to our colleagues, we pass it on to other brigades, and we pass it on to other countries. So I was really pleased when I got approached off Terry Johnson from Dubai Civil Defence, when he was asking me about recommendations for incidents surrounding target building software. Passed this information on to him, and then he liaised so I would get this presentation and pass it on, hopefully to people all the way across the world. I spoke to Des and Pete, and I can talk for England. I told them that in 15 minutes on building softening, I can give a very, very, very brief overview. My contact details are on the forum, and if anybody wants any other information once I've finished this presentation, I'd be more than happy to offer it. Okay, so we've gone 3 minutes and 36 seconds, so I better crack on. I was involved in the implementation of this procedure and was heavily involved in the working group to bring this procedure together when we realised we needed something like this in Manchester. Before I go on about the procedure, the actual parts of the procedure, and there are 4 main parts to target building softening, have been around for years. It's the way this has been brought together and a dedicated team, and I'll go on to how the team in Manchester was brought together and the additional training and equipment they use. But when this was brought together, you may see references in this building softening procedure that you've been adopting for years in your brigade, and I'm sure you have. There's nothing really new here. There's some new equipment, but it's the way it's brought together in a dedicated team. So it's task focused. So when it arrives at the incident ground, they're not disseminated and given other jobs. They are there specifically for target building softening. Okay, where did target building softening name come from? Well, human resources were involved with this procedure, and I say that tongue in cheek, and this target building softening came out of that. If I'd have had my way, it'd be called RIV, Rapid Intervention Team, similar to the ones in America and the ones in New York that I've worked with, but target building softening came out of it. And the name is okay. If you think about the building softening aspect of the name, it's kind of making the building easier to manage, if I can kind of leave it at that, and I'll expand on that as we go through the presentation. So yeah, hopefully it's got some relevance to the other presentations today. And yeah, back to what Des says about learning off incidents. This has come from an incident, and hopefully we can learn on it. Oh, so the presentation is a brief overview of the operational procedure, and it's designed to protect not just firefighters, but emergency services workers working in and around the fire ground. And I say emergency services workers in the UK, as I know we've got an international audience, we will have paramedics, doctors, nurses inside incidents with us. As part of the New Dimension programme, they were trained to enter buildings, even on Rapala and B-lane systems. So we can be working next to non-firefighter operational personnel within incidents. So it's not just firefighters. Okay, I've been involved in a number of incidents where target building softening has been involved. This is probably the most high profile one. I'm sure you all recognise the picture behind. I was involved with the incident at Grenfell Tower in London, asked from London Fire Brigade to come down and give them some advice on specific building stability equipment and monitoring of that incident. So relevant to this slide is the fact that the target building softening can be brought in at various stages of the incident. I think it's critical it's brought in from the start, but this picture echoes that parts of the procedure I'm going to talk about can be brought in at later dates. I think this was day 4 and 5 at Grenfell Tower, where I spent 2 days with London assisting them. So there were parts of the target building softening that can be brought in at a latter date. Okay, so the procedure was born following numerous high-profile incidents. I don't want to get drawn into that. That was kind of Adam's presentation earlier on. But it involves the attendance of dedicated crews with specific tasks that are all aligned as anything in the UK to the incident command procedure. So let's put a scenario together. Predetermined attendance, and I'm speaking for Manchester here, for a target building softening deployment would be 5+ operational appliances at that incident. Now, that is very open-ended. If the incident commander or the ops commander decided that part of target building softening skills were required, he could call us in at any time. And I've been on incidents with 2 pumps, and I've been on 25 pump makeups implementing parts of this procedure. Ideally, and I'll give you my experience and my knowledge and background on it, it's implemented from the start at 5 pumps and more on compartment fires, and then we can get the procedure underway. So you turn up to the incident, I'd report to the operational commander, and I would say that I'm there specifically for target building softening. Just in case there was a gap in his knowledge, he may be a temporary crew manager, a temporary watch manager, it might be a sector commander with not the greatest deal of knowledge on target building softening, then I would just give him a little steer to why I'm there. And the reason I do that is that we're not there for deployment into anything else on that incident. We're not getting involved in BA, we're not getting involved in salvage, we're not getting involved in water relay. We are there purely to implement this system. And it's important that you get that over from the start. Okay, so I'd attend the incident with the crews, whilst all the equipment like a road traffic collision is getting prepared for the incident. I would then do a 360-degree evaluation of that incident. And this is a tower crane collapse in London recently, where part of this procedure was adopted, and I'll refer to that in a minute. 9 minutes, 28 seconds, so I'm only got 5 minutes left. So a comprehensive survey would be done. As all firefighters know, I'm sure Merav over in Israel, and Adam in Bristol, and Pete, wherever you work, Pete and Des in Cornwall, the first thing we should do when we attend an incident is the 360 degree. Does this happen all the time? No, it doesn't happen all the time, because there's other things we may need to do at the time. Crowd control, explosions. There are many distractions that will not stop, may stop us doing our 360. So one of the things that the technical rescue crew will do on target building softening is do a comprehensive 360 degree survey, and they'll pick up the following information. One of the most critical parts of this is access and egress considerations into the building. What do I mean by that? How else we can get into that building if things go wrong, especially, and I've put into the PowerPoint, on single entry incidents. Single entry incidents is where there's one entry and one exit control point. Extremely dangerous types of incidents, because if that entry control or that entry into the incident becomes compromised for whatever reason, a building collapse, a gas explosion, further fire development, then we have real problems of getting into the building to get people out of it. So it's access and egress. So the technical rescue officer would walk around, and usually he'd look at things like roller shutters, barred up windows, weakness in any masonry that could allow the crews to breach into the building. And for those non-rescue or USAR people listening in, breaching is basically just creating an opening into a building, okay? Specifically if the single entry incidents and the crews are working a distance from that incident, from that entry control point. Because if things are compromised, then we need to get in quickly. And if we need to get in quickly, we need to have made an assessment, we need tools in place, and we need to have come up with a plan. Obviously, there are major considerations if we're breaching into part of a building which has a fire state inside it, and the crews that would attend the incidents, the ones from Manchester, are trained not only in all the other skills involved in target building softening, they're also advanced skills on positive pressure ventilation. So that's another thing I could talk about for certainly a lot longer than 15 minutes. So there are considerations on that, but one of the fundamental parts of target building softening, as the name suggests, however you think of the name, is to provide separate access and egress points into the building. The technical rescue crews that operate this procedure in Manchester are based north and south of the city. Manchester has 41 stations, covers a huge area. So they're deployed, east and west of the city, so that they can get down to the incident and the demographics of the incident within a specific time frame. And the crews that carry this out in Manchester are all trained in urban search and rescue and other operational skills that are focused on target building softening, one of which I mentioned is the positive pressure ventilation. Okay, so that's one of the first things they do. If they are breaching into a building, then there's obviously a consideration for stabilization, monitoring and mitigation. Okay, mitigation is basically just putting some shoring up, whether it's metal shoring or wood shoring, and monitoring is using specific devices, which I'll mention later, that monitor any movement in the building while you're breaching in, and also will monitor the building after it's breached in to tell you whether it's moving, similar to what I undertook for London Fire Brigade at Grenfell Tower. The picture on the right shows a classic example of building monitoring. The crane has collapsed on the building where I believe a lady was trapped inside. So London Fire Brigade quite rightly have applied monitoring devices to that particular crane to stop any further or to monitor any further movement as rescue teams go inside. Okay, so building stabilization, monitoring and mitigation are all carried out by the technical rescue crews, and they do specific courses to build up their skills in wood and metal shoring and the operation of the special monitoring equipment. Moving on, thermal scanning and full in-depth building and surrounding area evaluation. What I mean by this is if the officer in charge or the crews haven't had time to thermal scan the outside of the building, then the target building softening crews, the technical rescue crews will, again, as part of their 360, take thermal imaging cameras with a scanning facility and just look for separate seats of fire or any fire spread through sandwich panels, etc., and relay this back to the officer in charge. Okay, so they're specifically looking at the outside of the building all the time, and they're the eyes and ears to the incident and the ops commander for that. They would also liaise with the drone crews as part of the 360-degree evaluation, and they would get the thermal scanning capability from the drones and report that back through the technical rescue unit target building softening team back to the operation commander. One of the other aspects of target building softening would be the removal of objects compromising access to the incident ground for future deployments of resources. What do I mean by that mouthful? If generally a lot of the compartment fires we have, the big industrial units, certainly in Manchester, are heavily secured to prevent criminals entering the site. And these can be secured by external fencing, barriers that come up from the ground, IBCs which are full of concrete, or huge rocks that are placed there to stop criminals entering there and basically just taking over the site. So part of the evaluation, if for instance a high volume pump was required or an aerial ladder was required and there was no access there, then the technical rescue unit's responsibility through target building softening would be to remove those hazards from the incident ground so that any future deployments would be no problem at all. Conscious of the time, so moving on quickly. Specialist equipment, I could spend 2 weeks talking just about the equipment in the shot on the right hand side, but basically that is a shoring system that's been put up which is has a wasp attached, which is a monitoring device for any movement, and that's just showing an operator just monitoring any further movement in the side of that building. Generally, most of the fire and rescue authorities in the UK, and especially following the implementation of the New Dimension programme, are kitted out with lots and lots of urban search and rescue equipment, with 21 dedicated teams across the country that can respond to incidents and provide this equipment. However, I would recommend that all brigades have the initial basic equipment, then this can be on scene as soon as possible. Specialist equipment include DS11s, which is a diamond tip concrete chainsaw, which can impregnate and cut through up to 24 inches of reinforced concrete. Rescue saws, generally these are used for cutting into roll shutters, sandwich panels, and Petrogem, which is a really aggressive compressed petrol and oxygen cutting facility equipment. This can cut through basically a railway sleeper. So this would be good for taking bars off windows if we needed to access openings above ground with that are heavily secured with bars. Structural stability and monitoring comes through rescue struts, wooden shoring, and we have a couple of monitoring devices which I mentioned earlier. The next slide basically shows an incident happened outside a fire authority without these skills or equipment, and the brigade that responded to West Midlands, which cover around the Birmingham area in the UK, and they responded to rescue this chap who was actually buried under, I think, 22 tons of cheese. His forklift truck had hit a high bay warehouse and all the products landed on top of him. And it was, I think it was 24 hours before they rescued this guy. But they used target building softening. They actually impregnated the side of the building. They went through a sandwich panel and then monitored the side of the building and all this racking, all the blue racking you can see with stability monitoring devices as they rescued the guy. So there are authorities out there that haven't got the specific equipment that can, the smaller authorities that can ask for attendance from technical rescue crews from other fire authorities. But I would encourage all to have the basic procedures and equipment in place, as I mentioned before, so you can bring this operational procedure into action as soon as possible. Conscious I'm running over, so quickly a summary. Initiative, a procedure born off many incidents, a procedure that has been around and equipment has been around for a long time. It's just the way it's been brought together. It's the way it's managed. It's the way it's deployed. I've seen it working firsthand on many incidents, and it's an absolutely fantastic resource for the incident commander because it takes away all the headaches that I discussed, how they can help on the fire ground. It really does work. It's a great system. It's proven and it works, and it's task focused. The guys are attending the incident and they're specifically there for the target building softening, and they don't get distracted off that, and all the information comes back to the incident commander, and all the skills and equipment are brought to the incident as part of their PDA deployment. Thank you.